September 2, 1945. USS Missouri, Tokyo Bay. General Douglas MacArthur signs the Japanese surrender documents while the world watches. But 6,000 miles away, in a prison camp outside Phoenix, Arizona, 847 Japanese prisoners of war stand at attention in their compound. And when an American officer announces through a translator that the war is over, that Japan has surrendered, Lieutenant Commander Takashi Yamada does something that shocks every American guard present. He laughs. Not a nervous laugh, not a bitter laugh, but a genuine, confident laugh that says without words, "You are lying, and we know it." For the next 47 days, while the rest of the world celebrates peace, these men will refuse to accept surrender. They'll organize resistance committees, conduct secret meetings, and prepare for what they believe is inevitable, the moment when the Japanese military arrives to rescue them. What the Americans don't understand, what they can't possibly comprehend, is that these prisoners have spent 3 years in captivity being treated so well, fed so abundantly, and cared for so thoroughly, that they cannot believe their nation could have actually lost the war. The soap was real. The steak was real. The medical care was real. But to these men, it could only mean one thing. America was so terrified of Japanese retaliation that they were bribing their prisoners, keeping them comfortable until the inevitable Japanese victory forced their release. This is the story of the POWs who lived in paradise and called it propaganda. And before we begin, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these forgotten stories travel. Act 1. The Shock of Capture. December 8, 1942. Guadalcanal. Corporal Hiroshi Tanaka crouches in a muddy foxhole, his Type 38 rifle slick with rain, watching American Marines advance through the jungle with a firepower that seems impossible. His unit, the 38th Infantry Division, has been fighting for 6 weeks on half rations, their ammunition dwindling, their wounded dying from infected wounds because medical supplies ran out in October. The Imperial Japanese Army had taught him that surrender meant dishonor worse than death. His commanding officer, Captain Suzuki, had gathered the men 3 days earlier and stated it plainly. If captured, the Americans will torture you, mutilate you, parade you through their streets like animals. Better to die with honor than live in shame. But when the Marines overrun his position at dawn, when Tanaka's rifle jams on the 43rd round, when he's too weak from malaria to run, something unexpected happens. The Marine who finds him, a kid from Iowa named Miller, doesn't shoot, doesn't bayonet, doesn't even raise his voice. Miller lowers his rifle, pulls out his canteen, and offers water. Tanaka stares at the canteen like it's a snake. This has to be a trick. The water is probably poisoned. Or this is the calm before torture begins. He's heard stories from officers about American brutality, about prisoners forced to dig their own graves, about scientific experiments conducted on captured Japanese soldiers. But he's also dying of thirst. Has been for 3 days. His tongue is swollen, his lips cracked and bleeding. And the canteen is right there, water sloshing inside, close enough to hear. He drinks. And nothing happens. No poison. No sudden pain. Just water. Clean, cold, the best thing he's tasted in months. Miller even smiles, a crooked grin that seems to say, "See? Not so bad." Within an hour, Tanaka is in the back of a truck with 11 other prisoners, heading toward the American rear area. They sit in silence, waiting for the cruelty to begin. The truck passes supply depots stacked with crates of food, ammunition, medical supplies, more material than Tanaka's entire division had received in 6 months of fighting. He notices American soldiers eating chocolate bars, tossing the wrappers casually, wasting more food in 1 day than a Japanese soldier received in a week. The prisoners exchange glances. Something is wrong here. Either the Americans are unimaginably wasteful, or they possess resources on a scale that Japanese propaganda never prepared them for. Processing Station, Espiritu Santo. December 10, 1942. The prisoners are lined up outside a tent marked medical. Tanaka's heart pounds. This is it, the medical experiments they were warned about. He's heard whispers about American doctors cutting open live prisoners to study their organs, about injections that cause slow, agonizing death. An American medic, a tired-looking sergeant with glasses, motions Tanaka inside. Through the translator, he asks questions. Any pain? Wounds? Illness? Then he examines Tanaka's infected foot, a wound from coral that's turned green and festering, and without ceremony, cleans it with disinfectant that burns like fire. Tanaka grits his teeth, waiting for the real torture to start. Instead, the medic applies sulfa powder, bandages the wound properly, and gives him 2 pills with water. Malaria treatment, the translator explains. Take one now, one tonight. That's it. No experiments. No torture. Just medicine. The prisoners are then marched to showers. Here it comes, Tanaka thinks. The gas chambers they must have heard about. But instead, hot water pours from pipes overhead. Real soap is distributed, thick white bars that smell like flowers. For the first time in 8 months, since leaving Japan, Tanaka stands under hot water and scrubs away the jungle's filth. He emerges clean, genuinely clean, and finds fresh clothes waiting. Simple work uniforms, worn but laundered, smelling of detergent. The transformation is so complete that when he looks at his reflection in a polished metal mirror, he barely recognizes himself. That night, in a barracks lit by electric bulbs, the prisoners whisper among themselves. This is strategy, insists Private Nakamura, a veteran of the China campaign. They're softening us for interrogation. Tomorrow, the real treatment begins. Or they're afraid, suggests another. Perhaps they know the Emperor's forces will recapture these islands. They're preparing to claim they treated us well. Tanaka says nothing, but his mind races. The medical treatment was real. His foot already feels better. The soap was real. The hot water was real. Either the Americans are the most elaborately deceptive enemy in history, or everything his officers told him was wrong. He doesn't know which possibility frightens him more. Act 2. The Paradise Prison. January 1943. POW Camp, Oahu, Hawaii. The transport ship arrives after 10 days at sea, and when Tanaka descends the gangway onto Hawaiian soil, he cannot process what his eyes show him. The island is untouched by war. Lush green mountains, pristine beaches, buildings intact and gleaming in tropical sunlight. Pearl Harbor, which Japanese forces bombed just over a year ago, shows signs of reconstruction but not devastation. How is this possible? Japan's greatest naval victory should have crippled American military capability for years. Yet here are warships in the harbor, aircraft overhead, construction cranes working round the clock. It's as if the attack never happened. The POW camp sits in the shadow of volcanic ridges, surrounded by barbed wire and guard towers. But the structures inside are wooden barracks with real roofs, real floors, real windows. Tanaka has lived in worse conditions in the Imperial Army barracks back in Osaka. That first evening, dinner arrives on metal trays. Beef stew with vegetables, white rice, not the millet and barley mixture Japanese soldiers ate, bread, butter, canned peaches. The portions are enormous, more food than Tanaka saw in a week on Guadalcanal. He stares at the tray, then at the American guard watching from the doorway. This is the test. The food must be drugged or poisoned or some kind of psychological warfare. He pokes at the stew with his fork, watching the gravy pool around chunks of actual beef. Private Nakamura hisses from the next bunk, "Don't eat it. This is how they break us." But Lieutenant Commander Yamada, the senior Japanese officer in the camp, stands and addresses the prisoners in Japanese. "Observe. I will eat first. If I die, you know it's poison." With deliberate ceremony, he takes a full bite of the stew, chews slowly, swallows. They wait. 1 minute. 5 minutes. 10. Nothing happens. Yamada is fine. More than fine. He takes another bite, then another, eating with an expression that shifts from suspicion to confusion to something like wonder. Slowly, tentatively, the other prisoners begin to eat. And as they do, as the food, real, abundant, impossibly generous food, fills their shrunken stomachs, a dangerous thought takes root. If the Americans can afford to feed prisoners this well, how powerful must they actually be? February 1943. The routine solidifies into patterns that shatter every expectation. 0600 hours, wake-up call. Not shouted or violent, just a bell ringing. Prisoners assemble for roll call in the yard, while morning sun paints the mountains gold. 0630, breakfast. Oatmeal with brown sugar and milk. Toast with jam. Coffee, real coffee, not the roasted barley substitute Japanese soldiers drank. Tanaka watches American guards eating the same food from similar trays. Confirmation that prisoners receive the same rations as their captors. 0800. Work assignments. Some prisoners tend vegetable gardens. Others work in camp maintenance. A few, including Tanaka, are assigned to the camp library, cataloging books and magazines. The work is light, almost insultingly easy compared to the brutal labor they expected. 1200. Lunch. Sandwiches, soup, fruit. Always fruit, apples, oranges, bananas. Tanaka hasn't tasted an orange since 1941. The first time he bites into one, the citrus explodes across his tongue, and he has to turn away so others won't see his tears. 1800. Dinner. The biggest meal. Meat, beef, pork, or chicken, potatoes, vegetables, dessert. Sometimes ice cream. The first time ice cream appears, the prisoners react as if they've seen magic. Frozen sweetness. In Hawaii, served to prisoners of war. 2000. Free time. Prisoners can read, write letters, censored but allowed, play cards, or simply rest. The barracks are lit until 2200, then lights out. It's not prison. It's more comfortable than Tanaka's life as a civilian in Japan. The medical care proves even more shocking. When Tanaka's foot infection flares up again despite initial treatment, he's taken to the camp infirmary. He expects minimal care, perhaps crude field medicine. Instead, an American doctor examines him thoroughly, orders x-rays. For a prisoner, diagnoses a bone infection, and starts him on a new antibiotic called penicillin. This drug is experimental, the translator explains. Very expensive, but you need it to save the foot. Tanaka cannot comprehend this. The Americans are using scarce, cutting-edge medicine on an enemy prisoner. In the Imperial Army, soldiers with infected wounds were often left to die unless they were officers. Here, a captured corporal receives treatment that would be unavailable to most Japanese citizens. The penicillin works. Within a week, the infection clears. Within 2 weeks, Tanaka walks without pain for the first time in months. March 1943. Lieutenant Commander Yamada calls a secret meeting in Barracks 4 after lights out. 30 prisoners crowd into the darkness, speaking in whispers. We must understand what is happening here, Yamada begins. The Americans treat us better than our own army treated us. There are 3 possibilities. He counts on his fingers. 1. They are fools who do not understand war. But this seems unlikely given their military success. 2. They are following some code or law that requires this treatment. Several of us have learned about something called the Geneva Convention, rules for how prisoners must be treated. But why would a nation follow rules in war? 3. They are so confident of victory that they can afford generosity. They feed us well because they have unlimited resources. They heal us because they have medicine to spare. They give us leisure because they don't fear us. Silence follows. Then Nakamura speaks, his voice tight. Or 4. This is all theater. They're preparing for when Japan wins. They'll claim they treated us well, hoping for mercy. Several prisoners murmur agreement. This explanation feels comfortable. It preserves the narrative they were taught, that Japan will win, that America fears the empire's wrath. But Tanaka, sitting in the back, thinks about the x-rays, the penicillin, the endless supplies he's seen being unloaded at the harbor. He thinks about the American guards who sometimes share cigarettes, who show pictures of their families, who treat prisoners with bored courtesy rather than hatred. And he wonders if possibility 3 is actually the truth they're all too frightened to accept. Act 3. The illusion cracks. July 1944. Camp Livingston, Louisiana. Tanaka and 200 other POWs are transferred to the mainland for agricultural work. The train journey takes 3 days, and through the windows, they witness America in a way propaganda never prepared them for. Mile after mile of untouched land. Cities gleaming in the sun, factories pouring smoke into the sky, farms stretching to horizons. They pass through towns where children play in streets, where shops display goods in windows, where life continues as if war exists only in distant newspapers. One prisoner breaks down sobbing. "How can we win?" he whispers. "Look at this. Just look at it. There are no bombs, no ruins, nothing touched by war. In Japan, cities are ash. In Germany, their ally, refugees flood the roads. But here, in the enemy's heartland, baseball games fill stadiums and movie theaters advertise the latest films. The illusion that America is desperate, that Japan is winning, shatters like glass. At Camp Livingston, prisoners work in cotton fields alongside German POWs. The Germans, captured in North Africa and Italy, have their own stories of American abundance. Over shared meals, a German sergeant tells Tanaka, "In Africa, we were starving. In Italy, we were retreating. Here, I gain weight. I eat better than I did in Hamburg before the war." The two groups, former Axis allies, compare notes and reach the same conclusion. They were lied to. Both nations had promised victory while their people starved. The enemy they'd been taught to hate had kept them alive. April 1945. News filters into the camp. Germany has surrendered. Hitler is dead. Europe's war is over. The prisoners process this in stunned silence. Germany was supposed to be invincible. The Japanese officers had sworn that the Axis alliance would crush the Americans and British. Now half the Axis is gone. Yamada calls another meeting. His face has aged 10 years in captivity. "Japan fights alone now," he says quietly. "But the empire will never surrender. The Americans will have to invade the home islands, and every Japanese citizen will fight. We will turn defeat into victory through sacrifice." Some prisoners nod, clinging to this hope. But Tanaka sees the doubt in their eyes. They're well-fed, healthy, living in safety while their homeland is bombed daily. And they know, though few will say it aloud, that America has barely shown a fraction of its power. Act 4. The Unbelievable Truth. August 6, 1945. A guard enters the barracks with a newspaper. Through the translator, he announces, "A new bomb." One bomb destroyed the entire city of Hiroshima. Tens of thousands dead instantly. The prisoners laugh. It's absurd. One bomb cannot destroy a city. This is obvious propaganda, meant to demoralize them. Yamada dismisses it immediately. Impossible. They're lying. August 9th. Another report. Nagasaki. Another single bomb. Now the laughter is nervous. What if it's true? What if the Americans have developed a weapon so terrible that cities vanish in light and fire? August 15th. The camp commander summons all prisoners to the yard. American guards stand at attention. The atmosphere is strange, formal, heavy with something the prisoners can't name. Through the translator, the commander announces, "Emperor Hirohito has spoken on the radio. Japan has surrendered. The war is over." Silence. Then Lieutenant Commander Yamada, standing at the front of the formation, throws his head back and laughs. It's not joy. It's disbelief so complete it becomes comedy. Around him, other prisoners smile, shake their heads. The Americans have finally revealed their hand. This is the propaganda they've been building toward. Softening the prisoners with food and medicine so they'll believe this absurd lie about surrender. "Japan does not surrender," Yamada announces in Japanese. "The emperor does not surrender. This is a trick, an American lie." The translator conveys this to the commander, whose face darkens. "This is not a lie. Your emperor has commanded all Japanese forces to lay down arms. The war is over. You are no longer enemy combatants, but protected persons awaiting repatriation." More laughter ripples through the prisoners. Protected persons? Repatriation? The Americans are getting desperate with their theater. That night, Yamada organizes a resistance committee. "They're testing our loyalty," he tells the assembled prisoners. "Soon, our forces will come. Until then, we must remain faithful to the emperor." For the next 47 days, the Japanese POWs at Camp Livingston and dozens of other camps across America refuse to believe the war is over. September 1945. The Americans try everything. They show newspapers with surrender headlines. They bring in Japanese-American translators to explain. They even play a recording of Emperor Hirohito's surrender broadcast, his voice thin and crackling through speakers, speaking in formal court Japanese that most common soldiers barely understand. Dubbed, Yamada insists. American propaganda. Finally, in late September, the Americans arrange something extraordinary. They bring in Japanese military officers who'd been captured earlier, senior commanders who'd been allowed to hear detailed briefings about Japan's situation. Captain Ishii, captured on Iwo Jima, stands before Yamada's group and speaks with the weight of broken certainty. "It is true. Japan has surrendered. I have seen documents. I have spoken with other officers. Tokyo is destroyed. Hiroshima and Nagasaki are gone. The emperor has commanded peace." Even then, some refuse to believe. Nakamura spits, "You're a traitor. You've been brainwashed. But Tanaka, listening to Ishii's hollow voice, recognizes the sound of truth. It's the same sound as his own doubts over the past 3 years, the slow, terrible realization that everything they'd been taught was backwards. October 1945. Finally, proof arrives that cannot be denied. The Americans arrange for Red Cross representatives to bring letters from Japan, letters from families, from surviving military officials, from civilian authorities. The letters describe occupation, surrender, American forces landing peacefully on Japanese soil. Tanaka receives a letter from his sister in Osaka. Her handwriting is shaky. Brother, the war is over. Americans patrol our streets, but they do not harm us. They give food to children. The city is destroyed, but we survive. Please come home if you can. Mother prays for you daily. He reads it 3 times. 4 times. His hands tremble. That evening, he approaches Yamada privately. Commander, I believe it's true. The war is over. Yamada's face is stone, but his eyes betray him. They're wet, red-rimmed. I know, he whispers. I've known for weeks. But if I admit we've been living in comfort while our families starved, while our comrades died, while Japan burned. He cannot finish. Tanaka understands. Accepting the surrender means accepting that they survived by enemy mercy, that they ate steak while Japanese children ate grass, that they slept safely while their homeland was incinerated. The shame is unbearable. Act 5, The Reckoning. November 1945. The camp holds a formal ceremony. The American commander reads a statement. The war is over. You will be repatriated to Japan in accordance with international law. We hope you understand that your treatment here was not special favor, but legal requirement under the Geneva Convention. Yamada, finally accepting reality, bows deeply. Through the translator, he says, We did not believe you. We thought you were cruel, and you showed mercy. We thought you were weak, and you showed strength. We thought you were lying, and you showed truth. He pauses, struggling with words. We were the ones who were lied to. By our own nation. December 1945. Transport ship, Pacific Ocean. Tanaka stands at the rail as the ship approaches Japan. The coast emerges from morning mist, but it's wrong. Where cities should rise, there's only flatness. Where ports should bustle, there's silent ruin. The Japan he left no longer exists. Beside him, Nakamura weeps openly. We should have died. We should have died at Guadalcanal with honor. Instead, we lived, and now we must return to this. Tanaka doesn't respond. He thinks about hot showers, about penicillin, about the American medic who saved his foot, about the guard who shared cigarettes and showed pictures of his farm in Kansas. He thinks about 3 years of abundant food while his people starved. The ship docks at Yokohama. The city is skeletal, burned buildings, empty streets, people moving like ghosts through rubble. As prisoners descend the gangway, civilians watch with expressions Tanaka cannot read. Pity? Resentment? Relief? An old woman approaches him. You look healthy, she says, and her tone carries accusation. I was a prisoner in America, he replies. She stares at his filled-out cheeks, his clean clothes, his healed body. Then you were luckier than your emperor's subjects. She walks away, and Tanaka understands. His survival is his shame. He will carry it forever. Epilogue, The Paradox. 1946, Osaka. Tanaka finds work in reconstruction, clearing rubble alongside other veterans. They don't talk about the war often, but when they do, the POWs who survived American captivity speak in hushed tones about the paradox that defined their experience. They treated us with honor when we expected brutality, one says. And somehow that was worse. Tanaka records his experiences in a journal, trying to make sense of them. He writes, We were taught that strength meant endurance, that honor meant death. The Americans taught us that strength meant abundance, and that honor meant following laws even when treating enemies. They won the war not just with bombs, but with soap, with steak, with medicine, with laws that protected prisoners better than our own empire protected its citizens. I hated them for winning. I hate myself for surviving. But most of all, I hate that they showed us what we could not admit, that we were on the wrong side, that our nation's promises were lies, that the enemy we'd been taught to despise was more civilized than we dared imagine. He closes the journal. Outside, American occupation forces patrol the streets, distributing food to hungry children, enforcing order without brutality. The irony is crushing. Final shot, the historical record. Approximately 5,400 Japanese POWs were held in camps across the United States during World War II, a tiny fraction compared to German and Italian prisoners, because Japanese soldiers so rarely surrendered. Those who did survive in American custody reported a cognitive dissonance so severe that many required years to process it. Post-war studies showed Japanese POWs in American camps had mortality rates below 1%, compared to 27% for Allied POWs in Japanese camps. Weight gain averaging 15 to 20 pounds. Access to medical care superior to what most received in the Imperial Army. Treatment consistent with Geneva Convention standards. But the psychological impact was profound. Many returned home to devastation and faced social stigma for surviving in comfort while their nation suffered. The shame of good treatment by the enemy became its own form of torture. The soap was real. The stake was real. The mercy was real. And for the prisoners who experienced it, that reality was harder to survive than any cruelty could have been. Call to action. That's the story of the Japanese POWs who refused to believe they'd lost. Not because the evidence wasn't there, but because the evidence was too generous to accept. If this untold chapter of World War II history shocked you as much as it did me, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. These forgotten stories deserve to be remembered,